I heard Jonathan talk about energy. Let me tell you something interesting. Before we talk to the drivers of the real estate community, not just in your local association area, but in the state, in the nation, and across this globe, these folks are charged with trying to vision out not just tomorrow and next week and next year, but what's going to happen in our industry. So this is a great opportunity. But I've been reading over the last few weeks, especially what sells newspapers. And in our industry, what sells newspapers is the world is coming to an end. Especially in real estate, because the bubble is right here. Let me do some quick math for you. We have 75 million boomers, my age and a little younger. They will be trading, being kept alive. I'm an ATM for about 5 doctors. They will be kept alive over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Their trades will be sideways and down, but they'll still be trading real estate. We have 85 million boomers, 18 to 34. They accounted for 1 out of every 3 trades in real estate over the last 3 years. You do the math. There are 330 million people in this country. About 20-some million are under the age of 18. 85 million and 75 million are 160 million. That's about 1 out of every 2 people in this country that are going to be looking to trade real estate over the next 10 to 30 years. You don't have to be an MIT grad to figure that out. Who helps them? Who builds communities? Who researches enough to make them make the right decision, not simply from Zillow or an aggregator that gives them information that they think is effective, but from folks that understand the community. You build communities. You are, listen to me closely, you are the architect of the American dream. Without you, this dream that we call homeownership does not exist. So today we're going to ask some questions. They're going to be hard questions. And we're going to listen to the responses. But I want you to give yourself a rousing round of applause. Realtors are #1 in this country. Okay. Let's see if we can get some things going. Let's start with Ray. Ray has been around for as long as I can remember. Good friends, Ray. We're going to talk a little bit different here. We're talking about mergers and acquisitions. Tell us what the benefits and the challenges in your business is with the acquisition and mergers of corporates today.
Thank you, Mo, and I love the introduction. Ray has been, but we're good friends, so we get away with that. Everyone, President Moe Veissi, let's give him a big round of applause. And Teresa, Deborah, and the entire Miami leadership team, great job in putting this event together. Give yourselves a big round of applause. So I think your question, Mo, related to mergers and acquisitions, they're important for our business, for everybody up here, for our companies. You can go out and organically grow your companies. It takes time. So mergers and acquisitions are extremely important to us, but they have to be the right mergers and acquisitions. And we do focus a great deal on what kind of synergies we can get from that transaction and that join of those 2 companies or the combination. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. The challenges are sometimes, and I think everybody in this panel up here who has been involved in mergers and acquisition would agree, it's culture. It's making sure that the culture of the 2 companies come together and they have a good match. So I'll leave it at that, and maybe some of the other panelists may want to add to it.
Anybody wants to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. First of all, I agree with Ray. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Mo. It's a great honor to participate with this distinguished panel. I think the culture is not only important for us looking at companies that we're interested in acquiring with or merging with, but also for you as real estate professionals. Sometimes the decision that we might make works for many, but not all. And I think it's a good time for all of you as professional real estate brokers and agents to look at the acquisition and understand if it's the right cultural makeup for you. I'm certain that all of us would make decisions that are right financially for our respective businesses, but it's a good time for you to look at it, make sure your deals make sense, make sure the culture is the ultimate place where you want to be. Some of them will change over time, and I think it's a good chance to reflect upon your business and reflect upon the opportunities that the merger presents you with.
We've got a short period of time, Ray. I'm going to ask you one other question I'd like you to comment on. What is the secret in your mind of being a successful real estate salesperson today, a professional today?
So very quickly and very briefly, passion. Passion for the business. It's not about the transaction, it's the passion that you bring every day to everything you do and every task you take on, and also knowing that you're helping, whether it's a luxury home buyer or first-time home buyer, you're helping folks achieve a dream that they have. So be passionate about the business. I love this industry, and I will spend the rest of my life in this industry, as everybody else up here, I'm sure, in the audience. But be passionate about it. Do it for the love of the business and helping others, not for the transaction or the compensation at the end of the day, which is very important.
So, Mark, go ahead. So, Mark, in your opinion, what's a dominant trend in the real estate business right now?
The dominant trend, I think as realtors, what we have to be aware of is we are now in the fourth industrial revolution, right? In school, you learned about the first industrial revolution, which was in the 1760s. Things became mechanized. We had machines. Then we had cars in the 1860s. Then in the 1960s, we had computers. We are in the middle of artificial intelligence and data collection. That is the way the world works. And the sooner we can get on board with that and understand that that's our ally and that's our friend, and we can use that to create a better transaction, the more powerful it will be for us.
So tell me, you talked about technology. Is there one aspect of technology that you think is an important application in our profession today?
Well, I'd say the things, Mo, that are key is, number one, you have to have the data, right? I mean, I leave the parking lot in my office. You guys probably have this happen too, right? If I leave at 5 o'clock at night, it tells me how far to home. If I leave at noon, it tells me how far to racetrack, right? Because it knows I get a big gulp every day at noon, right? The same thing is going to be parlayed into real estate. I heard some of the people talking about earlier, it's going to be very real, right? We have tech companies that are trying to take you guys out of the game. They're trying to take all of us out of the game because they believe they can control the data and they can control the technology. You need to align yourself with somebody who is collecting data, who controls the technology and owns that themselves. Because if your company and your business doesn't own your technology, whether you're a mom and pop or you're part of a big group, then you are going to be out of the fourth industrial revolution. I think we all have to be able to work our cell phones and be able to collect data.
So tell me, what in your mind, what is a key skill? We talked about passion. What is the key skill, and if you think it's passion, tell us, that you look for in a real estate professional?
Well, I think the new age professional is going to be different in that they have a skill to manage artificial intelligence and so for example, you will have the opportunity when you take a new listing, if you guys can imagine this, in very short order, in the next 3 to 6 months. Right now, you can go to a neighborhood and into your cell phone, you should be able to say, snap to a neighborhood and get all the neighborhood data that fast. You should be able to get solds, actives, pendings, average sale price, all that stuff that fast. In the very near future, you're going to be able to talk into your phone and you're going to be able to market one of your listings, and you might say, I want to market to the 1,000 nearest homes. And then you say, no, actually I just want move-up buyers. So now what you can do is say, give me just move-up buyers, and because of artificial intelligence, it will tell you people that have been in their home 3 years or more, and people that are in that area. And now all of a sudden, you can just target the 47 homes that are potential move-up buyers for your property, and you'll be able to do that in a minute. So I think that key piece, Mo, and then if I was going to add one piece to what Ray said is, I think you also have to remember customer service will always be key. I had a friend of mine who was on the phone with me the other day, and he said, I just had somebody call me, and they wanted a realtor in a particular area, and I had done 2 transactions with them, but I did not recommend them. I said, why? He said, the transaction went very smooth, and everything was great, but at the end, they never called to say thank you. I wish they would have just called to say thank you. So when someone asked me for a realtor in that area, I said, actually, I don't have one. So you've got to have great customer service, and you've got to be tech-enabled.
Great. Mike. Mike's been around with the family company forever and ever. And he brought his entire family.
Thank you.
So, Mike, in the market today,
Yes.
some of us think that it's slowing down, that the bull market cycle is over. Some people say it's done. Huh? Tell us what your thoughts are.
It's interesting. I mean, we live in a great, as you mentioned, a great spot to live. There's no question there's no more land here, and the demographics keep flowing in. So I'm bullish on South Florida. There's the next years and the future years, we're going to continue to see rising prices. But I don't think people realize that in 2015, we actually peaked in the number of sales. And the reason that we peaked in the number of sales is we don't have the inventory. People are staying in their homes longer, going from 8 years on the average at the bust in 2005, 2006, 2007, to now 12 years. And so when you look at the segmentation of the market, the luxury market is up 30%. So again, I think you need to figure out where we're talking. The brickle market may be overbuilt. And so I do think in the overall path, we are seeing a little bit of price fatigue. And what do I mean by that? Is that since prices have doubled almost since the Great Recession and come back since 11 and 12, and you're seeing pricing of properties at a greater amount than you've seen before, some buyers are going, is it going to continue to run? And we've seen double-digit, maybe high single-digit appreciation over the last 3 or 4 years. And for a moment, there's a pause. I think it's kind of like chicken when we used to play with the cars. Don't tell my mom, when one car was going and you wanted to make sure the other one would move. And I think the buyers and our sellers are playing chicken right now. And who's going to blink? I believe that the sellers will win in the long time because the inventory is still low. Until you start seeing inventory rise, which it's not, and the numbers are statistically not showing it, you're going to still see appreciation, and then people will jump back in. But I think the rise in interest rates made a little bit of pause, and so you are hearing across the country of a little bit of a pause right now that I think we think will be short-lived.
So tell us, in your thoughts, why we aren't seeing a more robust construction industry from the builders of single-family housing.
Yeah, I think, again, I mean, I don't have that answer. I mean, that we do need the building, and we are seeing for the first time in South Florida probably new home constructions in Palm Beach. You mentioned Martin County, where there is land, homestead. We just don't have the land here, so Broward County's full up, and only in the outliers can you find it. So I do think you're seeing a momentum in building, but I think they're conservative, going through the regulations, getting the zoning and planning. We're dealing with one property in Palm Beach, Avenir. It's 2-3 years away before you start breaking ground and building. It's a 5,000 home community. So I think just the time, the logistics, and the understanding to get that process through. But we may want to ask Mr. Lennar here. I mean, he may be able to help us a little bit more.
I'm in no way speaking for the parent company. But however, we do hear again and again from home builders across the country that there's another issue, on top of what Mike alluded to, and that's labor. There's very challenging finding trained labor to go and build homes. I have a millennial at home. He's not going to be in the construction business anytime soon because that's not just the way he thinks about the world. So that labor shortage is a challenge as well today. And then, as Mike said, you've got regulations, you've got land entitlement processes you have to go through. And then there's this price point where builders can generate margins. And perhaps the demand in that price point today is not as solid as it should be. So again, they're focusing where the buyers are. But again, I'm speaking as a realtor, not as a home builder. Thank you.
Anybody else comment on
Yeah, I
that?
think there's some other things going on here. Is if you look at the land and what you can buy land and what product you can put on and make any money as a builder, you just can't have something that less expensive. And so what's happening is our average and our price is going up, but wages they're going up, but they're not going up as fast, and so you got a gap. Now it'll eventually kind of work itself out, but you have that going on. As far as this area, I believe y'all are on one of the best places
Amen.
in the world, and this is why I say this. Is
You want to move here?
they won't let me move here. I'd have too much fun. But anyway, what I'm saying is if you really look what's happening in this area, it's right smack in the middle of the Western Hemisphere. You look at your airport, you have more direct international flights, I think it's 108,
Right.
versus domestic flights, I think it was 53. You look at the Fort Lauderdale airport, it's not that balanced, but it has. You look at something that happened, I think, in the summer of 2016 that had tremendous impact of the whole state of Florida, but specifically this area, is the widening and the deepening of the Panama Canal. So larger ships can go through there. And so why did they build these 40-story cranes down in the Port of Miami? You know, is so they can that. And so if you look at your commerce in this area, it's been unbelievable, and I see that's going to be even more unbelievable. You know, I think y'all are in a great place. Another thing is when I was growing up in the state, we only had a couple industries. We had agriculture, tourism, and then construction came. Right. But now you're seeing life sciences come, you're seeing technicals come, you're seeing a lot more businesses come to the state of Florida because we're a very favorable place to have businesses. And I know I do a lot of relocation businesses. I've worked with 13 group moves last year. The most I can ever remember working with at one time, 1 year, was 5. Wow. So you look at that, you guys, I tell you, you are in the best place to sell real estate in this whole world. I'm envious of you.
You know, sure. I would add to what Clark said. You know, people tend to look at the national housing market as a national one, and frankly, we're not one. We may be as a country, but we're not as a real estate market. And if you look at major home developers like Lennar, they tend to give us a perspective looking at the nation. And while there are all these excellent fundamentals that we're all benefiting from in South Florida and throughout the state, frankly, they're not the same across the country. So while you have seen a slow in the overall new home construction, new home sales, it's not consistent with what we're seeing in Florida. In fact, if you look across the country, there seems to be overall economic growth. However, it's inconsistent with what we're seeing in the residential market, which is this pessimism and sort of resistance. People aren't comfortable with this notion that we can have sustained economic success and sustained economic growth. Florida is now benefiting from a plethora of initiatives that are making us more opportunistic. And I think it's important that we recognize that, and I agree with what everybody's saying. We're in one of the most exciting places in the country to be selling real estate right now. Our price points are low. Comparatively, nationally, whether you're in the luxury sector or in any other sector, we're still at the bottom tier. You look at competitive markets, whether it be New York or California or Chicago, I mean, we're still at a fraction of the cost. That combined with the fact that we still have this major part of our population that has historically and will continue to find their way down to Florida as they become empty nesters and retirees. So the price point compared with the age of the population, compared with tax reform, puts us in an extraordinarily opportunistic place. And while it might get into what I want to talk about, I think it's relevant. When we talk about tax reform, and Mike and I talked about this, we tend to think about the ultra luxury, the uber wealthy, but in fact it drives all other sectors of our community. As the uber wealthy move here, they're dining out more, they're spending more money on other items that they may not have been purchasing if they were living in other markets. That's creating more jobs, that's creating more demand. And so if you look at markets like Brickell, where many would argue it was overdeveloped, you can also look at what's filling in those markets, the culture, the dining, the restaurants, the schools, all the other elements. We're creating jobs jobs. People, everyone I think agrees that accessibility, traffic congestion is a major component of what we're selling today. So we have things like the Bright Line, and we have the ability to not have to leave downtown Brickell to still get grocery stores, entertainment, malls, movie theaters, health clubs. Everything that you want is now available. So as these higher price point items sell, and there's no question that we've seen it focusing on the luxury sector, I think the gaps will fill in, and I think we're going to see more and more. I mean, I've spoken with all the home builders, and they're all saying, hey, find me land, I want to build. So they want to build here because they know their clients want to move here. And when I'm in Long Island or I'm in other parts of Connecticut or New Jersey, everyone's asking me the same thing. Where can I move in South Florida? And when you look at what they can buy here compared to what they're selling for there, it's a home run. So you're going to benefit from this and really capitalize on what I think, and I think we all think, is going to be a very exciting, bullish market. I hope it's not one that skyrockets. I hope it's one that grows methodically and cautiously and successfully, because I think that breeds a more sustainable market that we can continue to benefit from for the next 10 years.
Anybody else have a comment on it?
I would just add that I completely agree. We're all very bullish on Florida. South Florida, Southeast Florida, Central Florida, Northern Florida, Southwest Florida. Florida is definitely the place to be, and someday everyone in the world would own a property in Florida. That'd be great, and it's coming. So definitely Florida's resilient. We have great diversity in the state and incredible weather 363 days out of the year. So definitely Florida is the place to be selling real estate and building good real estate.
Putting it practical, though, I do think you may need to work on those prices. And so I think if there is a lull in the marketplace, get price reductions, work it down, and I think then you, in effect, have it. If you have the inventory and you're working on getting the listings, then I think you're gold. If you're chasing the other buy side, it may be a little bit more difficult in a tight market.
But that goes back to what you were saying about data. Understanding the data, looking at the price points, understanding when properties have been on the market for way too long. Well, why? Because they're priced wrong. So when you're dealing with a customer that's saying, how come my home hasn't sold? How come my home hasn't sold? Pull the data. Show them that, hey, look, your neighbor's home sold in 100 days because they were priced right. You keep thinking that your home, which is the same size, same finishes, same lot size, is worth 30% more. Reduce the price and I'll show you it will sell. But be proactive and don't be afraid of telling your client that the property's not worth what they think it's worth. They all think it's worth more than it's worth. So if you could just have the confidence and the data, which is so easily accessible, to show them why it's not worth what they think, you'll do much better, you'll sell much quicker, and you'll have better clients.
So 3 things: location, condition, price. Tell me what's the most important.
Price.
Price.
But you are seeing outdated stock that's not being as well received as renovated and updated and refurbished stock. If it's new and it's clean and if it's nice, it sells, because the millennials don't necessarily want to do the work. And so I think you're seeing a little bit of a dichotomy, understanding the market and understanding the innuendos of those local markets. And I do believe it is a local market.
Mo, if I was just going to add to this conversation, I would say all of these things are great and important, and yet if I'm a realtor, the question I'm asking myself is, who's controlling the leads? Are you controlling the leads in your business, right? So all of these pieces are great and they're important relative to what we're doing, but what I would ask myself today as I'm sitting here is, am I paying for leads? Am I paying exorbitant prices for leads? Or do I have systems in place? Am I controlling my database? And am I connecting with my database on a regular basis and serving the customer so that I can get those leads? That's what's going to keep you in business for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. That's key.
And we've done that. I'm just
go
on
ahead.
that. You know the internet leads, and I don't know if Zillow or Truly is here, but are 2.5%, 2% conversion. So basically 98 of those 100 leads are not converted on. Maximum that I've ever heard is 3-4%. Depends on if it's scrubbed or not, and as you go through with it. But personal relationships, smart CRMs, and being able to have the database that you work on and building deeper, longer lasting relationships, I think is the key. You cannot break that tie if you've got the personal relationship. In your phone, you've got all the people you need. 500,000 people. If you work that database, if you have a smart CRM, if you have artificial intelligence that's starting to work with them, we're rolling that out now. I don't think there's any question that you've got the hold on the market way above the other markets that are out there trying to sell you the market.
So generating leads, extremely important. However, this is a contact sport. And we heard from the Realtor.com group, which I think it's gotten better. It used to be 70% of the leads went unanswered.
That's 50%.
By us in this industry. So generating leads is key, it's important. The key component is to go ahead and respond to those leads and contact those customers and then follow through and provide exceptional customer service.
Clark, you had
Yeah, I think, you look at the whole lead atmosphere, and yes, electronic leads are real. If you think about it, if anybody called you, would you call them back? Well, where do we lose that mentality when we're looking at electronic leads? Because if you don't get back to the people or respond to them, then all of a sudden, that's a bad customer service thing.
Yeah.
So you want to respond to them. But what I do think in the lead world is, as we're working with predictive behavior, and it's not so different than y'all do in a smaller group of people. I mean, you look at what triggers real estate. Somebody gets married, they have babies, death, divorce, unemployment, employment. All those things trigger that, and on a smaller database, you can probably keep track of it. On a larger database, it's harder to do that. And so if you have predictive behavior popping this stuff up saying, hey, this person's got a 60% chance of doing something this next year, you're probably going to follow up on that lead a little bit different. It's probably going to be a little more face-to-face as opposed to some electric contact. Now, here's what's really kind of blowing my mind. This is fascinating to me. Probably not anybody else here, but but you look at that and you start doing this mechanical thinking, which really takes a lot of data and starts grinding it a little bit more and finding things out that you probably can't quickly put together. And it may be as simple as these 5 or these 10 people bought Great Danes in the last 5 years, and they live in a 2-bedroom condominium. Well, 40% of them are going to do something in real estate the next year. Right. Why? It's 'cause, and it gets smarter and smarter. And so what I would advise everybody in this room is build your databases.
Right. Yeah.
Build them. If you got...
I agree. I agree with them.
I always say, how many you got in your database? 100. Well, you need 200. How many you got? 1,000. You need 2,000.
Right.
Really focus on building that and start working that database, and then and with the things that are out and coming out, you'll get smarter and smarter and smarter, and you know what? You'll build your business.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think it's also, we talk about price, we talk about data. I really do think the product has evolved, and I think you need to understand the product because it goes hand in hand with understanding your clients, understanding those database clients and understanding what they want, and recognizing that the market has evolved, the product in our market has evolved, the type of offerings that are available today or that are being constructed or in pre-sale now are very different than the product that exists in our market today or has existed over the last 10 or 20 years. In our condo development offerings, it's fascinating to see the type of product that is being offered today, from the outdoor space, the ceiling height, the amenity packages, the curation, the demographic they're targeting. So when you're working with that database, it's also helpful to understand what that database is looking for. If you're catering to a particular segment of the population and you know that they want something specific that a particular developer or a market is offering, target that and focus on it. Don't just sit back and rely upon intelligence that's being thrown at you, because then you're not triaging your clientele to understand what they want and how to speak to them. It's not the same fit for every person. And so understanding that market from market to market, and frankly also knowing your limits. You can't service every market effectively. You have to choose a market, become an expert in that market, and understand the offerings. Too often I see realtors that think they can cover from Martin County to Dade County and do it effectively. It doesn't work. You really need to know your product type, because otherwise you're really not doing anything except peddling other people's data. You need to know what you're offering.
So, in the old days, one of the things we did was farm an area.
Amen.
We did that through mail, snail mail. We did that through knocking on doors. We did it through phone work. Now I'm going to ask you, with new technology, what do you think the best opportunity is to try and build that database?
I mean, I think we've heard it all. I think there are programs. We just rolled out a program where you'll be able to know what your client's doing on the web. and be able to interact with them. We rolled up to our New Smyrna Beach office. A person, we were experimenting, beta testing it. The person was in the database. When he rolled into New Smyrna Beach, he got a text from the client, and the client never, or from the associate, and the associate didn't know the text went out. So it'll text for you, it'll communicate for you, it'll start working those positions for you. And so I do think social farming, demographic farming, print still works, media and expertise locally, and I think you're just layering. It's not either, it's an and rather than an or.
I think you use a lot more video. I mean, go out to the subdivision, take a picture of yourself, and I know everybody gets a little shy of that, but do it anyway. And this is a great subdivision. And what happens is the more you get video of yourself on this subdivision, when somebody Googles, okay, who's a realtor doing this subdivision, if you have a lot, is your video strong, you're going to pop up. Now let me ask you a question. Anybody have an Alexa at home? Go home and ask that Alexa, who would you recommend, a realtor you'd recommend in your own neighborhood? And if it doesn't say you, you got some work to do.
or some money to spend.
You know, it's funny,
Let me
Jay,
answer that quickly. I think, by the way, I think what everything you've heard is accurate, but I do think that each of you need to also gauge the results of your farming. Not everything works in every market the same way. There is no question that social media and the ability to mine information is going to be extremely effective. But figure out what works best for you. If sending postcards is giving you the greatest results, send more postcards. Still do the social media, still do the social building of relationships. Go out, get involved, meet people. The one-on-one is going to produce the highest yield if you're good at it and you promote who you are and you learn about others. But I think it's important to gauge it. So pick something, work on it, gauge the results, do something else, see which one's the best. Then you're going to build your farming mechanism to work most powerfully for you.
So Jay, you were quoted in Bloomberg article in August about New Yorkers flocking to South Florida, actually to Florida. And one of the principal items you mentioned was the financial benefits and the tax benefits. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it briefly, Mo, and I'll say it again because I think it's an opportunity for everyone. You don't have to be a multi-million-dollar earner to benefit from the tax plan. Everyone's going to benefit at every level, some much more than others, but many, many, many people are now calling it quits on the Northeast. Not to say that that market's going to implode or it's going to be a bloodbath. I think there's a lot of people that will live up there and continue to live up there. But I think a lot of people are now saying, this is the last straw for me to make that decision to move to the Sunshine State. So whether you're farming other markets, whether you're building relationships in other markets, whether you're trying to build client relationships or you come from one of those markets, become visible. Because there are many, many people in the Northeast. In fact, almost everyone that I speak to has commented to me that they've had the discussion, whether it was with their family, their spouse, their children, they've had the discussion about relocating. And we're seeing the same thing on the West Coast in California. People relocating from California for the same drivers. Tax reform. They're moving to low income or no income states like Nevada or Texas. So to ignore this opportunity is foolish. Capitalize on it. If you're from those markets or you have roots in those markets, reach out to them and let them know that you can service them, you can educate them on this market. If you're coming from that market, or if you're not coming from that market, build relationships. I think all of us have relationships in the Northeast and other parts of the country. And I'll tell you that I've seen it more now than in my 20 some odd years in the business. People are now moving from the Midwest. We all know the Midwest focused on the west coast of Florida. We have now seen many people from the Northeast focusing on the west coast of Florida. So there's all kinds of opportunity to build referral relationships and capitalize on this transition of wealth, because I expect, and I think most people that are following this expect this to be a long, slow drip of wealth moving out of the Northeast.
And Mo, to that point, I mean, your technology should allow you to connect with tens of thousands of realtors across the country.
Right.
There are systems that are in place now through technology where there are billions of dollars of business being done agent to agent. So don't forget, not only do you have your client database, but you also should be getting agent to agent referrals. And the technology will just enhance those relationships. It'll help you facilitate the process. It's going to get to the point where on your phone, you will have 3 offers that come in, and the artificial intelligence will tell you the percentage of chance of A A closing, B closing, C closing. And you'll be able to present that to your seller. If you've got that technology and you're aligned with that, then you can win in this coming age of real estate. If you don't have that technology, you'll be left behind. So make sure that you're plugged into all of those pieces that we're talking about.
Offer big referral fees. Get the people in other markets to think about you. Don't be shy. It's a great opportunity.
That's right.
So on an international basis, we know places like LA, Seattle, New York, Miami, Chicago, they attract a lot of international investment. What, in your opinion and in your experience, what international locations are tapering off? Which ones are taking their place?
Well, definitely China is a big player today, and I think they will continue to be a big player in acquiring commercial real estate and residential real estate throughout the United States. Those states obviously on the west coast of the country are more accessible, but as we get direct flights to South Florida, I believe they're going to play a bigger role in this market.
Absolutely. How many Venezuelans are out there? I mean, my heart aches, and so we've seen definitely that disaster happening, and that definitely has affected Doral and the surrounding area, and Weston's to some extent. So we see a shift, but usually when there's a crisis in one country, there's benefits in others. So you're seeing Argentina pick up a little bit, and Colombia. So I think the dollar, the rise and strength of dollar, I think has hurt us all. I think Miami has said that there's 35% of the international sales, and it's dropped a little bit by 5 or 10%. So, but we are a place that people will. How many of you were not born in the United States? Raise your hand. Yeah, I like living in Miami. It's so close to the United States. So we will continue to see that, and I think you'll see that here, and I think we have the access and we have the connections here in the room.
Yeah, something I saw recently in traveling, and I thought it was kind of an interesting thing because we've been a state where when a lot of countries and people were in distress and they were worried about their family and their wealth, they're looking for somewhere else to move. We've been working with some South Africans. And so you think about what's going on in South Africa right now, where the government's taking some land, it scares people and they move.
Turkey also.
I think Canada has continued to be very strong. I think Canada will continue to be a major player with us in Florida. It's unfortunate the currency issues are playing a detrimental role for all of us, but I think our domestic market has become even more relevant for the state of Florida. So ultimately, I think a little bit of weakness out of Latin America, strength from Canada and the other markets you mentioned.
So Clark, let me ask you a question. From economic standpoint, electronic lead generation today, we talked a little bit about it. Mike said about less than 5% really pan out. How would that, in your opinion, or the rest of the panel's opinion, disintermediate the kind of interaction that salespeople have had over the period of time in the real estate profession?
Well, I think what it does is if they're reaching out to you in leads, it's a way to capture people, and if you can capture people and put them in your database and give them information that might like to know about, like, if like a listing alert. I'm sure the association here has a listing alert. Well, you'd like to know what that house your neighbor listed it for, and you keep giving them information, then what happens is that's a repetitive thought, and you're branded with that. And so I think it's a way to capture more people and do something with them. I think at that point you take the big data overlay of that and you start getting a predictive analysis of who's going to do something in real estate, what percentage of, and then I think the mechanical thinking is going to even fine-tune that more. I mean, I can't even imagine how we'll be selling real estate in 30 years. It just blows my mind seeing I came from real estate selling it where I used carbon paper and drop dimes in a box on the wall to make a phone call. It's just really exciting to me. I think y'all are in a great time.
Technology is not going to replace you.
Right. Agreed.
What technology is going to do is, if you're not embracing it and utilizing it and taking ownership of it, you're going to have to pay higher referral fees for that business because someone else is going to be doing it. But it's not going to replace us.
But there is more money flowing into real estate than I've ever seen. It used to be families fighting against families, and even here you can see corporate against family. So I do think there's hundreds of billions of
We love you, Mike.
Hundreds of billions of dollars, so coming into the business. And so what they're trying to do with the disruptor is they are trying to disintermediate you. I mean, open door, instant offers, I mean, all of the purple bricks. I mean, there are public companies and people coming into our business that are trying to get to the consumer first, disintermediate, take the fee, and take the fee away from you and us, and be able to then, in a sense, grab a piece of the pie. There's $85 billion of commissions paid a year in the nation, and that's raising an ire to basically Wall Street saying we want a piece of it. The answers that we're hearing is personal relationships, building your database, knowing their local knowledge, and being able not to get disintermediated with real expertise. But if you're on the fringe and if you're not deep and rich, then in a sense, and rich in knowledge, then maybe you will get, or we will see some fringe disintermediators coming into the market.
I think there's something that at some point you kind of come back down to the ground and really kind of look at what this is all about. And what I tell a lot of people is, you know, if you really want to be successful in real estate, does anybody want to know what my thoughts are? Okay. Is when you get up in the morning and you go and you look at yourself in the mirror, and that's kind of an ouch, ouch, I look like that. That's a moment of truth. Oh boy. Ask yourself one question. And the question is do you have an appointment today or not? Yeah. And guess what? There's two answers.
Yes or no. Yes.
Aren't there? If you do, then you want to do everything possible to get prepared for that appointment so you can do the absolutely best job to give that customer a great experience. And when you leave that appointment, ask yourself two questions. What would I have done differently and what did well? So you want to kind of learn. And guess what? If your first answer was in the morning, I don't have an appointment, what do you think your next question should be? What are you going to do to get an appointment? And so you take all that and it brings it down to, okay, what can I do to make an impact on my life? And it's not that you can't use all the whirlwind of technologies and everything, but it really kind of focuses it back on what can you do to make a great career.
So let me do this, because I know you're all ready to go. The interest rate in Venezuela has just increased. You know to what percentage? We're at what, 4.65, 30-year fixed, no increases. In Venezuela, the interest, you ready for this? Is 62%. 62%. In 2008, in this country, it was around 16.5% to 18%, if you could get it. And we still sold real estate because people understood the safety of what's here in America. We talked a little bit about downtown. How many of you were born in Miami? I know the boss is going to kill me because I'm going over. Okay, do you remember the Walgreens downtown? Yeah, that Walgreens downtown sits on a 9,300 square foot lot. It's about 4 stories high, just sold. They're going to redo the entire building. 9,300 square foot lot. They bought it for $19.5 million. Listen, smart money, funny money, old money, new money, weird money comes to the U.S.
Comes to
and
Miami.
it comes here because of safety. It comes here because of safety, and then it searches out location, and you are in the absolute right location. I want to start with Clark. My apologies. If you would just introduce yourself, your company, and tell us what you think for the next 10 years in Miami. Go.
Okay. I'm Clark Toole. I'm the president of Coldwell Banker Residential in Florida and Coldwell Banker Commercial in Florida. And what I think is going to happen in Miami, it will be the next Hong Kong, Singapore.
My name is Mark Olesh. I'm the regional director for Keller Williams Realty, covering all of South Florida. And, you know, I think Miami is going to continue to boom. I think all of real estate will continue to boom. I think the takeaway here is, what role are you going to play in that? Are you going to control your database, and are you going to have a technology vehicle to do that, to educate the consumer? Because there is a real battle here, and make no mistake about it, it's very real. Amazon wants your information. Zillow just bought a bank, right? There are people trying to disintermediate us and take us out of the industry. That's up to you and me and us if we're going to allow that to happen or not. So take that seriously, manage your database, and grow your business.
Mike Pappas with the Kai's Company and
Who's
Illustrated
that?
Properties in Palm
I don't think that was loud enough. Who are you?
Speak up, Mike.
Oh, I'm the father of Christina Pappas.
That's your time.
And she did get engaged, just so you know, and I am. Right?
Wow, it's great.
So to another board member, Albert, so we're having a big talk to whether or not we're letting him in the family, but I think the kids all said yes. So welcome to the family, Albert. So, and I live here, roots are deep, there's no question we are the future. We are what we dreamed of yesterday and are becoming and will be in the future one of the best, most exciting cities in the world. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Rei Mesa, and I'm responsible for Berkshire Hathaway. Hey, hi, guys. Responsible for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Florida Realty. I believe that the future, the next 10 years and beyond for Florida are amazing, and Miami's going to lead that amazing future in the state of Florida. So thank you for being here today, and thank you, Miami.
Finally, I'm Jay Parker. I'm the CEO of Douglas Elliman. I agree with everything that was said tonight. Thank you.
You got some people there.
I think Miami will continue to rise in the global scale in terms of its value, its opportunities, its growth. This is just the beginning of the transformation of this incredible city to a world icon, and I look forward to being a part of it. Thank you.
You are the architects of the American dream.
Congratulations.
Let's give our thanks to Moe and the big guys. Thanks so much for being